You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast.
I started Aura in 2017 in South Africa, mainly because I always say folks could get a taxi or a pizza quicker, they could get help when they're dying, and that doesn't make sense. We always say how important innovation is, but if people don't have basic human needs like food, water, and safety, they're not going to be thinking about tomorrow, they're going to think about surviving today. We don't have other people sitting all day managing other people. I think that is a weird thing that's come out of the world where you have your smartest, most expensive people sitting watching other people do their work. And that's how we make sure that everyone who works for Aura, they're common in our core values.
Stay tuned as we bring you inspiring people who are unlocking Africa's economic potential. You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast with your host, Tessa Adamu.
Welcome to the Unlocking Africa podcast, where we find inspirational people who are doing inspirational things to unlock Africa's economic potential. Today, we have Warren Myers, CEO and co-founder at Aura, which is a technology platform making emergency response services more accessible and affordable than ever before. Their latest smart emergency response API instantly connects those in need to top-tier security and medical responders anytime, anywhere. Welcome to the podcast, Warren. How are you?
Yeah, good on you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you in the podcast today. Where are you calling from?
But still based in Johannesburg, although I move around quite a bit. Home base is still in Johannesburg.
Brilliant. So yeah, thank you for joining us today. And as always, I like to get straight into it. So I was hoping you can give us a brief introduction into who Warren Myers is.
Well, thanks. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been running companies since I was quite young. This is my third business. Always centered around safety technology. I started Aura in 2017 in South Africa, mainly because I always say folks could get a taxi or a pizza quicker, they could get help when they're dying, and that doesn't make sense. So we got to work at building this platform, which effectively democratizes access to emergency response services. And I mean, that's who I am. I mean, we can get into the detail of it, but I'm an entrepreneur, and I love building impactful businesses that leverages technology to expedite the value proposition.
Fantastic. As you say, you're an entrepreneur. This is your third business. Most of the businesses you've started have centered around security, safety. So was there a personal experience or some type of insight specifically that led you to founding Aura back in 2017?
My business before Aura was a monitoring company. We would monitor CCTV cameras live. And we got really good at picking up, real-time crimes in progress. That service was dependent on a quick response. I always say in safety that technology detects, but humans respond, right? And the idea came like, why don't we get the closest guy there? Like, never mind what company he's from. Let's just aggregate and platform all the good guys onto one platform and ensure that wherever there's an emergency or wherever there's a crime, the closest guy is sent out there to deal with that. And it worked out really well, in Africa and actually in all emerging markets. In fact, I will probably get into our business in Europe and America shortly as well. The guys who run private fleets, either security fleets or ambulance fleets, are very area specific. So they, small to medium sized businesses that operate in very specific polygons of the specific areas. And all Aura has really done is platform them. So we put our technology in their fleets and consolidated them into one force, effectively, that can be offered out to big bases of customers, whether that's through a telecommunications company or an insurer. So no matter where your customers are, they are able to click into this service and get help anywhere in the country, whether that's for security emergencies or for medical emergencies.
You've given us insights into how Aura currently operates. I mean, would you say there's been an evolution from the company in terms of how it operates previously to how it operates now?
I think the evolution is more about how we use the platform in Europe and America. in Africa, and we're live in East and West Africa, the service is still the same as it originally was envisioned, which is how do we enable anybody to access help when they need help, not just the rich who have private alarm systems. How do we get anyone with a connected device to get help when they need it, and really democratize that? And that's worked really well. We have over 1.5 million monthly active users through a variety of B2B to C distribution partners. Like I mentioned, those are like companies like Uber and insurance companies and telcos and banks and telematics companies that distribute for us. So you can't go and download and pay for Aura. We're not a B2C business. We're B2B2C. And where we fundamentally changed our go-to-market strategy is when we went into the UK and America now, and the businesses there don't service individuals. We service home and business alarm systems, because the police will no longer do the response to those properties anymore unless there's a verified crime in progress. So in the UK and America, we don't respond to individuals who have problems. We respond to homes and businesses whose alarms have gone off, and they require someone to respond out there and verify what's going on. I always say in the UK and America, you can still phone 911 and get decent help. That, unfortunately, isn't the case in most of emerging markets. Our public sector resources are extremely stretched, and therefore, there's the private responders are what we use to help people in their own personal capacity. In the US and the UK, the gap that we fill there is more in the private alarm system space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so 100%. I mean, you've mentioned the democratization of emergency response and what makes Aura's dispatch and routing different from traditional emergency responses. So with this, I know it runs through an API that integrates into existing platforms such as WhatsApp and different IoT devices. So how does it do this? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so first of all, the end user is accessing us through their insurer or their telematics company, or through their bank, or even through a company like Uber. When you have an emergency in Africa and Uber, there's an SOS button that when you press that comes through to our platform. And our API pretty much authenticates an active user subscription. And then what it does, it receives the location, the lat long. So we know where you are and who you are. And then on the back end side of our platform, we have technology in all the security and ambulance vehicles that works similar to Uber in that it sends the closest one there to you. So there's no human involved in phoning or radioing or dispatching someone. It's all what we call machine to machine. Someone needs help, they push a button, and the closest person who can provide that help immediately responds and is navigated to that customer. So that's how the whole thing kind of works. And that input, that API input, can be ingested through WhatsApp. It can be ingested through an app, third-party app like Uber. It can be sent from an IoT physical button that can send a location. It can even be dispatched via a control center who's monitoring alarms or cameras. So it's a very versatile and hardware and application agnostic API that really just sends us as Aura location to say that someone's either having a security or a medical incident. And whichever incident they're having, we then dispatch that respective network. We'll either send medical emergency responders or security responders.
I know that one of your goals is to make emergency services affordable for all. So how are you able to reach what you'd call low-income or underserved communities in African markets?
So before Aura, to access private security at your home, you'd have to pay somewhere in the region of $30 a month USD, which really was just for the top income brackets. What we've done now is we've democratized that access to about $2 a month, where you can access those services through your phone, via your insurer, or via your bank, like I mentioned. That's enabled mid-market income earners to access this help. And what we've done for the very low income brackets is we have some subsidized customers. Some of them are actual governments. So in South Africa, the Gauteng or the Johannesburg government subsidize over 100,000 very at-risk cohorts, mainly gender-based violence victims in townships to have access to this. We also have a couple of funded NGOs that help the very low-income people who are subsidized. And that's how we distribute. So if you can, firstly, we've made it very, very much cheaper for the average citizen to pay for this. Like I said, about $2 or $3 a month, as opposed to 30 or 40. And then for those that really don't know where their next meal is coming from, we target them through subsidized verticals.
Keeping to the theme of access, I know one of the biggest challenges to access is not just the affordability, it's also the infrastructure. So what infrastructure challenges have you had to overcome in certain African markets in order to make the service available?
The only prerequisite infrastructure we need is cellular connectivity. And look, across Africa, that's moved moved massively. There are some blind spots in very rural areas, and that is a limitation for us. We can't provide this service to folks whose phones are not connected to the internet. And that's all we need. We need an internet connection on the customer side and on the responder side. But just so you know, like we service a lot of the telcos in these regions, and there the percentage of the population that is covered within internet access is 98%. That last 2% is a challenge. It's not economical for the telcos to put down towers in these very rural areas because there's so little people who live there that would use them. Unfortunately, that is a blind spot for us, but like I said, it is still very outlying. It's a couple of percent.
As you mentioned, over the years, internet accessibility has increased on the continent, which has enabled you to scale your product. So what lessons have you learned during that period in terms of scaling the product in African cities and rural areas?
I could really just say maybe for East and West Africa that telecoms companies don't just provide you the connectivity, they're also really strong distribution and billing engines.
Yeah.
A lot of the challenge with selling a subscription business is getting folks to opt in onto a wallet or digital or credit card and getting them to pay every month. And that a lot of that is handled by telcos in Africa. I mean, most people run their lives off cellular money effectively. On top of them connecting the users to the internet that enables the service, they're also excellent partners at distribution.
Fantastic. Because I know over the years you've managed to save over 7,500 lives. Are there any specific stories that particularly stick out or stay with you during that time?
I mean, there's so many, man, like 7,500. It's hard to pick out specific ones. We've saved a very small child that was drowned. We were able to resuscitate them. We've had a situation before where we responded quick enough to prevent a gang rape. There was a woman who was, had 4 or 5 guys getting ready there, and we managed to get there quick enough before anything could happen. It's just terrible what does happen in large places of Africa. Not really just theft crime, but more like very violent crime. And I mean, we deal with dozens a day. So it's hard to really pick out specific issues, but I love the fact that this platform is really there for the folks that can't really protect themselves, or the really at-risk cohort, which is, your gender-based violence victims, small children. I think it's a basic human right to be safe and feel safe. And I feel like if people don't feel safe, they can't really grow and they can't innovate, and that's why I feel it's so important for Africa, because we're always saying how important innovation is, but if people don't have basic human needs like food, water, and safety, they're not going to be thinking about tomorrow. They're going to think about surviving today.
Yeah.
And that's why there's such a leap and a head start in Europe and America and parts of Asia and Australia, where people have full bellies and they're safe. And they think, okay, well, how can I make tomorrow better? Because today I'm okay. And that's quite a foundational problem that you have in emerging markets, is that people aren't safe. And if they're not safe, they're going to worry about today and they're not worrying about tomorrow. And another way of defining worrying about tomorrow is innovating.
Very true. So, I mean, it's obvious from the success of the platform, there is a need for this product, which has enabled you to raise funding. You've recently gone through a Series B raise of $13.5 million. What has this enabled you to do that wasn't previously possible?
Mainly, that money is being used mainly to launch America. America is a massive market. It's got a huge cohort of alarm systems that currently point into police when required, and the police just cannot handle the demand that's coming out of the private alarm space, both with regard to call taking as well as getting vehicles out to dispatch. And that's a very obvious gap that we know how to fill and to say, and not to replace police. In fact, we're doing what the police just don't have the resources to do, which is to triage all of these alarm calls. And in fact, in Europe and America, if we ever respond to a property where there is an incident, we don't engage with the criminals. That the police come out really quickly and respond. They're just not willing to go out to the 99% of the false alarms, which is what we're helping with. So I think we're doing a really great service to these countries where we're actually enabling police to be far more available and ready for serious crimes as opposed to responding to false alarms that are coming out of the private alarm space. We have a couple other projects where we're enabling our API globally, our global clearinghouse, which is really going to enable any customer, which would be a safety app, a wearable platform, or any type of staffing solution or travel safety provider who wants to click into one global provider that can get them ambulances and public safety and private guards out in the countries that need them through one API and one service level agreement. So you can imagine a big global customer clicking into Aura, and in some regions where they need private, we'll facilitate the private response. But in countries like Sweden or parts of like Japan, the public response is really good, and we would clear and facilitate the dispatching of law enforcement and government ambulance out in those regions. So we're going to we can really cover you anywhere, wherever your customers are, as opposed to really focusing only on the areas where we have private guard networks. It's now we're going to enable one integration to cover the globe.
As you mentioned, the funding will enable you to expand into the US. Why would you say now is the right time to expand into the US?
There already are a number of major cities, about 12, where the police have mandated that they won't respond to unverified alarm calls anymore. And those companies that are monitoring those alarm systems and the customers that are paying those subscriptions, they expect someone to go out. And we are creating a solution for that because, as simply put, the police used to go out to verify and now they won't anymore. And the customer expects someone to go out to their home or their business when their alarm goes off. We provide access to private guards who go out and fill that gap. So it is fairly, let's say, early on, but the scale of the business, just those 12 cities, are 10 times bigger than the total addressable market in the UK. And that's just 12 major cities in America. There's still another 50 tier 1 and tier 2 cities over and above the 12. So we're taking the bet that the police and cities are going to follow this move with regard to relieving police from doing these false alarms and rather making that a private requirement and really keeping police reserved and available for serious crimes as opposed to doing alarm triage.
I guess what's exciting is that very rarely do we see African startups scaling and expanding outside of the continent. So what is it that excites you most about building a global brand, a global company?
Well, the vision of this company is to create a world where everyone is safe. It wasn't an Africa-only vision, that safety is a basic human need anywhere in the world. And so it was always driven by a vision. And I got to tell you, it's tough work because to raise the money you need, like what we did now, when you're only in Africa and you could really have a great business in Africa, it's very difficult to attract global money if you're only in Africa. European and American investors tend to not, they've really got strong mandates around proving revenue and having customers in Europe and America. That's why before we did this round, one of our key moves was to get the UK going so we could prove that we can use this platform to generate non-African revenue. So that is a challenge. I think it's very difficult to take that step out, because even to set up in the UK, you need good capital. I think we just kind of got lucky and we got it right there. So again, it came through from that vision, and we do expect, like, post America, to really, through this global clearinghouse, start servicing customers in South America, across Middle East and Africa, large parts of APAC. So this is that expansion plan will kind of kick off probably in Q4, maybe early next year, once America's wind is in the sails.
So what would you say some of the biggest operational challenges you've faced trying to scale across multiple continents?
Our biggest challenge is always getting response companies on board when we're new. These guys don't know who we are. There's no customers yet, so there's no responses yet. So we have to kind of get them on. Effectively, we pay them synthetic demand. We pay them retainers until the customers do come on. And that's always a challenge. It's a challenge from just a time and effort point of view, getting them on, as well as use a lot of capital to pay for their, if I call it, availability until your customers do come on, because you can't get customers unless you have responders. The challenge is getting responders on when you don't have customers yet.
Interesting. So how are you specifically tailoring your approach to, I guess, local needs and regulations in the US?
Every state has got its different licensing, and we've got a team that handle that. But it's quite straightforward. You just have to be like the folks, the companies that we onboard to respond for us have to have the required licensing. Remember, we're a technology platform. We're not a response company, so we don't per se need to be licensed. We just need to ensure that the responders that we do have in each state have the required regulatory licenses.
How does a typical collaboration work with, say, insurers and law enforcement in the US?
So in the US and the UK, we only sell through alarm companies that monitor alarms, whether it be through apps or through physical call centers that used to send the police, and now they have the ability to send us. So at this stage, our partnerships with insurers and telcos are really more focused in Africa. We have the end user opting in for the service. In America, our customers are always an alarm company that has, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of alarm signals that they monitor. And in some scenarios whether they can video verify or know that there's a live incident, they'll send the police and no problem. But in a lot of scenarios where they can't verify, they use us to go out there and verify what's going on.
I guess going back to something you mentioned earlier in terms of the company was never intended just to service Africa. It was in terms of servicing the wider needs globally for security. So how do you describe the culture within the company, especially as you scale across different time zones, different continents?
Yeah, so we, I think the organization is designed to really centralize what has to be centralized, which is typically finance and tech is centralized, whereas the local teams, they're the ones that handle demand and supply in each region. And that's what we want. The guys who head up each region, they have all the toolkits that they need to bring on response companies and bring customers on, while really all the global functions are taken care of. From a culture point of view, we've got a very flat structure here. Like, anyone in this business can set up a time directly with me. We don't have like hierarchies. I think we don't have managers either. I think managers are a waste of time. Everyone has a report, like someone they report into to help them do their job, but we don't have other people sitting all day managing other people. I think that is a really a weird thing that's come out of the world, where you have your smartest, most expensive people sitting watching other people do their work. So that's really managed more by systems, where there's a strong dashboard and a strong reporting systems in the business that make sure that we're tracking KPIs well. And then we also, in order to enable this kind of very autonomous culture, we have very clear core values in our business, which there's 6 of them, and we drill into them every week with the team, which is really the way in which we expect people to behave autonomously, which is like with integrity, being a pathfinder. Like, all of these core values are ways that we say to people, go and peer your tools, go be autonomous, but you have to behave and you have to abide by these core values. And no matter what country they're in, it applies to them. And that's how we make sure that everyone who works for Aura is common. They're common in our core values.
Fantastic. So it's clear that tech is a huge part of the company and has helped, I guess, drive it forward. Are there any emerging trends or innovations that you're seeing in the security response space in the continent that you're quite excited about?
Not really on the response side. I think what's really evolving is the end user side, how they access services are going to fundamentally change over the coming years. I think apps are going to really not completely fall away. I think you'll still use an app to access like entertainment and shopping. But I think something as simple as panicking, like saying you're in trouble, is something that's going to be, the user experience, I think, is going to be far more either biological, so either like your voice or your heart rate, knowing that you're in a trauma event, or being done through an actual agent, an AI agent that understands you're in trouble, or you can vocally prompt that you're having as opposed to, you can imagine you being attacked and then saying, hold on, let me just get to my app. We've always known that user experience needs to evolve, and it is evolving. I think that we're really excited for that. Like, I don't ideally want anyone to have to open an app to get help. I want them to be able to biologically let us know that they need help, whether it's through their voice or their heart rate or something like that. I think that's quite an exciting next step for us.
So if we look to the future, what would you say borderless emergency response would look like in the next 5 to 10 years' time?
Yeah, so it's one single global integration that enables that company's customers or staff, no matter where they are in the world, to get emergency help, effective emergency help, whether that's private response services in countries where the public services are extremely broken or weak, or facilitating the dispatch of public law enforcement or ambulances in countries where they are still really good, like Singapore, Japan, Northern Europe. We don't need to send private responders out if the law enforcement are excellent, right, still. So it's really having one integration and one SLA that we can use to cover anyone, anywhere.
Fantastic. And how will you, Aura, be hopefully contributing to this borderless emergency response space in the next 5 to 10 years?
That service will be live in the next 12 months, where you'll be able to click into one integration through us, and you're either going to get private response, private guards in Africa, parts of LATAM, and we're going to facilitate the dispatching of public services in the other regions where, like I said, the public service is still quick and good. So that's probably about a year away.
Quote of the week.
As people, we often have quotes, mantras, proverbs, or affirmations that keep us going when times are challenging or when times are good. Do you have one that you can share with us today?
Go big or go home.
Very American.
Yeah.
No, I love that one. There's no time to waste. Go big or go home. Thank you for sharing that with us, Warren. We've come to the end of today's conversation. Great way to end. It's clear that what Aura is doing is very powerful. Your mission to democratize safety, it's not just ambitious, it's very necessary as well. And look forward to seeing how things continue to grow and reshape the emergency response space, not just in Africa, but globally. So fantastic. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, excellent, man. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bro. Bye-bye.
Thank you to everyone who has listened and stayed tuned to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, or tell a friend about it. You can also rate, review us in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast. Thank you, and see you next week for the Unlocking Africa podcast.